Hi there. I'm Dr. Basha P. Jordan Jr., pastor and founder of Hope Alive Outreach. And I'm here this evening to do a tribute to Black History Month and also to my grandfather, Elder Jordan Sr. I started this series last week, and today will be the second episode in this tribute to Black History Month. One of the things that's so critical to us as Black people is that we need to know our heritage. We need to know where we've come from. We need to know the legacy of our own families. In my research about my grandfather, Elder Jordan Sr., and how he came to have such prominence in the city of St. Petersburg, I found some discrepancies in the written word, the written documents about him that were contradictory to the oral tradition that was handed down to me by my father. My father was Reverend Basha Pasha Jordan Sr. My name is Basha Pasha Jordan Jr. First of all, I believe that it's important for us to know what our name means. We as African Americans have a tendency to name our children after various popular or famed individuals, or there came a time in our history when we began to name our children after individuals who may have attained certain notoriety. Others have created names. My name, Basha, for example, comes from the First Kings, which is a book in the Old Testament. And in 1 Kings chapter 15, it talks about how King Basha of Israel. In chapter 15 of 1 Kings, beginning at verse 16, it says, "And there was war between Asa and Basha, king of Israel, all their days." And so my name means king. We are kings and queens. Many of us do not realize that Black people were the first people who were created. You might say, why do you say that, Dr. Jordan? Well, before I give you any additional information and history about my family, I want to give some documented history about African Americans. And it comes from the most widely read book in America, which is the Holy Scriptures, the Bible. And if you have your Bible, and I do hope and pray that those of you all who hear this tribute will allow your children and your grandchildren to hear this, to see it, and to be able to read some of this information for themselves. In the second chapter of the book of Genesis, where it's talking about the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve were created, in Genesis 2, beginning at verse 15, it says, "And the Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it." Adam is this man. God created a woman named Eve. Listen to where Eden, the Garden of Eden, was located. The Bible says here that in verse 10, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden. And from thence it was parted and became into four heads. The name of the first is Pison, Pison. But I want to go down to verse 13. "And the name of the second river is Gihon. The same is that which compassed the whole land of Ethiopia. And the name of the third river is Hadeskal. That is it which goes toward the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is the river of Euphrates. Ethiopia and Euphrates. The river Euphrates runs through Africa. Ethiopia is in Africa. Ethiopia, according to Webster's dictionary, is located in Northeast Africa. Now, the document that I'm reading from, Webster's New World Dictionary, if you look up Ethiopia, you will find these words. Ethiopia, ancient kingdom in Northeast Africa on the Red Sea. Ethiopian definition. Its people of culture, Black. Designation of the biographic realm, which includes Madagascar and all of Africa. If Eden, where God created the first man and the woman, Adam and Eve, is located in Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is located in Africa, that means that the first individuals who were created by God were African Americans. African Americans are strong people, strong physically, strong mentally, strong emotionally, strong intellectually. African Americans, the Egyptians, Egypt is in Africa. They built the pyramids. Whenever someone begins to talk about Black people, we need to know where we've come from. We are the original indigenous dark race created by God, according to the Bible, and also according to Webster's New World Dictionary. My grandfather, Elder Jordan, was a slave. He received his emancipation at the age of 15. Now, when I did my research about my grandfather, Elder Jordan, who ended up being one of the pioneers of St. Petersburg, Florida, I found out that there were some discrepancies in the documentation of the census that was done when he was alive. Also, there were some discrepancies in the census which documented his age and also the age of his wife, Mary Strobels. I have a document. It is the marriage license. The marriage license from the state of Florida. The marriage license of Elder Jordan and Mary Strobels. This license has them married in Bronson, Florida, December the 19th, 1885. But there is another document that says that my grandfather was born in 1868, which is incorrect. My father, through the oral tradition, would tell me about his father. And he would tell me on many occasions that he was 15 years of age when he received his emancipation. The Emancipation Proclamation, which was signed by President Abraham Lincoln, was signed in 1863, January 1, 1863. And so if my grandfather was 15 years of age when he received his emancipation, that means my grandfather, Elder Jordan, was born in 1848. Know your history of your family. I would suggest that we as African Americans do two things. Number one, that we tell our children our history. We tell our children about our fathers, about our mothers, about where they came from. My father told me many times that my grandmother, who was his mother, was a full-blooded Cherokee Indian. However, the Census Bureau from the state of Florida has her being a mulatto. We know what a mulatto is. A mulatto is an individual who is a cross between a Caucasian and an African American. In other words, a Caucasian and an African American, or a black person and a white person. The offspring is a mulatto. I showed you the last time that a picture of my grandfather and my grandmother. She was a light-skinned woman. But just because she was a light-skinned woman did not mean that she was a mulatto. Sometimes, as we go back into history, and most of the history is not written by African Americans, but most times history is written in America by Caucasians. And so many times the writings have been slanted. The writings are incorrect. But when we tell our children our story, when we tell our children about our fathers and our mothers, that is known as the oral tradition. That's the first thing I would suggest that we do with our children. The second thing that I would suggest that we do is to document, write it down, who your grandfather was, who your mother was. Write it down, type it out, put it in an email so that it can be documented and you sign it as a child of your mother, a child of your father, so that your children and your grandchildren will have documented evidence of who you are, your legacy, where you all have come from, where you were born, how old you were when you got your first business, how much education that you got. Write it down. Two things. The oral tradition means we're telling the story. And secondly, documentation by writing it down. My grandfather, Elder Jordan, who was a former slave, was a businessman. But he first of all was a father and a husband. It is so important for our people, especially African American people, to realize that our strength comes from our family. The cohesiveness of the father and the mother coming together in holy matrimony to be married and have offspring from that marriage. My grandfather was a prime example. Not only did he marry Mary Strobel, who became Mary Frances Jordan, but he had children by his wife, which is God's way of doing things. Even though it may not happen all the time today, in today's society, women can have children by men that are not their husband, but that does not negate the fact that the father and the mother when they are there together, whether they're married or not, and raise that child, give that child something that he or she cannot have through single parenting. My grandfather was not only a father, a husband, he was also a businessman. When he came to St. Petersburg in 1904, he opened up a fruit stand. From a fruit stand, he had a livery stable. From a livery stable, he began to build houses. He began to buy tax properties. He also, according to a document that I have in my hand, he owned the Royal Express Bus Line Incorporated. And this document was filed on February the 19th, 1926, here in St. Petersburg, Florida. The Jordan family was the first to have a bus line for Black people that went from St. Petersburg, Florida to Tampa and back. In the height of segregation and racism in our country and in Florida, primarily in St. Petersburg and in Tampa, African Americans built the first bus line from St. Petersburg to Tampa and back in 1926. Not only did my Jordan ancestors have a bus line, but also this document states that it was filed in August the 3rd, 1928, Jordan Beach Incorporated. Jordan Beach was in South St. Petersburg, down on the, down there where they have all the beaches now. There was a beach for African Americans, and it was called Jordan Beach Incorporated. And this was compiled by the Office of Cultural Affairs, documented. Not only did my grandfather do this, but as I mentioned before, he built the Manhattan Casino in 1925. And at that time, it was the height of segregation, and the Manhattan Casino became the focal point. It became the hot spot in St. Petersburg so that African Americans could have a place to go and party and to have a good time and to dance. And all of the African American greats who came through there, Ella Fitzgerald, Count Basie, James Brown, Little Richard, Etta James, Ray Charles, B.B. King, they couldn't stay in a hotel or a motel at that time. They had to stay in someone's home or sleep on the bus. There was a documentary that I watched on television last week that said when Duke Ellington came and had to end up sleeping on the bus, he said he would never come back to St. Petersburg again. Black men, Black women, know your history. Know what your name means. Have a legacy. Have the oral tradition passed down by having conversations with your children so that they will know your history. Document your history. Put it in an email. Write it in a book so that people coming after you will be able to see that the Black man and Black woman were born to be kings and queens. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can contact me at the email on your screen, info@hopealiveoutreach.org. That's info@hopealiveoutreach.org. Or if you want to contact me at my telephone number, you can call me at Hope Alive Outreach, 443-250-9635. That's 443-250-9635. Or you can go to our website at www.hopealiveoutreach.org. It's my mission in life to give hope to all of God's people, especially those who suffer from the disease of addiction. If you'd like to contact me, I'd love to hear from you. But remember that no matter who you are and no matter what you do, there is hope for you, no matter what's going on in your life today. I'm the Hope Doctor. Have a great day.